Welcome to the NCO Journal Podcast. This is a podcast series where we discuss published articles with authors and provide a forum for the open exchange of ideas, information, and solutions. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Brandon Cox, Senior Editor of the NCO Journal. With us is Chago Zapata, the Managing Editor, and Sergeant First Class Osvaldo Akite, the NCOIC. Today we discuss the article, More Than Promotion Points, by First Sergeant Wolfgang McLachlan. Before we kick things off, First Sergeant, could you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Wolfgang McLachlan. I am the First Sergeant for the United States Army Network Enterprise Center, Fort Wainwright, Fort Greely in the Alaskan interior. I've been in the Army 19 and a half years and began my military career in 2004 as an airborne infantryman. My first assignment was in Charlie Company, 3rd of the 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment at Fort Richardson, now J-Bear, Alaska, and deployed in combat tours to both Iraq and Afghanistan. After 6 years with 3rd of the 509th, I volunteered as a drill sergeant and served 3 years as a senior drill, teaching infantry OSID at Fort Moore, Georgia. Toward the end of my time on the trail, pre-existing injury sustained during an airborne operation forced me to choose to either medically separate from the Army or reclass to a different MOS. I chose to continue serving in the Army and became a 25 Sierra, which is a satellite communication systems operator maintainer. I spent a year in AIT, and after becoming MOS qualified, I was stationed at Camp Carroll, South Korea, as a SATCOM facility NCOIC. Afterwards, I had the privilege of serving the United States Army Space and Missile Defense Command as part of 1st Space Brigade, and then the 53rd SATCOM Battalion in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And those years really opened up my eyes to a whole new world of Army operations and was an absolutely incredible experience. Then I was given the opportunity to return to Alaska. My wife and I were dual military at the time, and we made the decision to PCS up to Alaska Interior, where we remain today. Current trajectory is I'm going to retire in November 2025, and then probably go to the lower 48 and then continue working in the educational field with populations that are traditionally marginalized or disenfranchised and perhaps maybe not have gotten the educational footing that some other populations have, and hopefully just being able to take my experience in the military and leadership and in education and being able to help people out and kind of play it forward post-military.
So first of all, First Sergeant, you have a great speaking voice. Are you sure that you don't want to go into like documentaries or like podcasts after this?
Well, I'm trying to channel my Morgan Freeman. We'll go with that.
There you go. Hey, First Sergeant, so in your introduction to your article, which I loved, you ask, any NCO with a college degree, is it important? And you likely hear yes. But if you ask them why an education is important, you likely hear, I don't know, or because the Army thinks that it's important. I find that strikes close to home a little bit for me, and as a junior soldier, you're told to start your civilian education if you haven't, so you can get your promotion points up and you can reach that next rank. But I barely ever hear why it's important, from those senior leaders, especially for use outside the military. Why do you think that is?
I think it is a situation to where it's always been this way. Many times people ask the question of, can we do this versus should we do this? And as we look at older generations like myself, being about to turn 49 years old, we're very used to be like, boom, we want you to do this, roger that, move out, take the hill, do whatever's asked. But with younger generations, in order to really get that stake owner buy-in, they want to know the reason why. What's the logic behind it? What's the end state? And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I believe that, and from my experience, having worked with, younger generations, explaining the end state and the logic behind it, and then unleashing them to build a better mousetrap, shall we say, I've been very surprised at some of the products that have been produced by my soldiers that were better than what was already in place, and then we just adapted it. And I think that as an organization, if we are not willing to change, we will very quickly be relegated to the dustbin of irrelevance. And so I think we have to ask that question of, why is this messaging being broadcasted? And that's something we'll talk about here shortly. What's the logic behind it? What's the end state? What's the intent? And that's kind of really what spearheaded my entire doctoral research.
Why exactly was it why did you choose to write this article? Was it like was there a specific trigger that said, hey, I need to write this? What was it that forced you to go in this route?
There's some disclosure. I am a huge fan of the band Rush. Have been for several decades. And the drummer, Neil Peart, he has a really famous quote that I think really hits home, regardless of one's profession. And it is, what is a master but a master student? And if that is true, then there's a responsibility on you to keep getting better and to explore the avenues of your profession. And that has really hit home with me throughout my time in the military. And as I'm looking at it going, as a senior leader, these are things that, we have to ask ourselves is how we, groom and train and mentor the next generation, and an 8 April 2024 military.com article entitled Army Career Education Benefits May Be on the Chopping Block, with tuition assistance cuts being considered too. It kind of, to get after your question, it says basically on average, about 101,000 soldiers across all components have used tuition assistance annually, and the annual cost of that is about $218 million. $218 million. That's a lot of taxpayer dollar. And, it just drives home the fact, are we getting a good return on investment? As I keep looking at the messaging that, hey, go to college, go to college, go to college, there is a definite lack of, okay, what's the intent? The point of the journey is not to arrive. It's the journey itself. Just kind of like with our academic journey being in college, the end state, what appears through the messaging, at least from my foxhole, is, hey, go to college and get your degree. Get that piece of paper. Okay. Right now, that's the message. So whether I have a degree that is related to my MOS, or I have a STEM degree, or I have a degree in penguin dance theory, it's all the same, because a piece of paper is a piece of paper is a piece of paper, right? And I think that's a huge issue that we need to give clear-cut guidance. No, it's not the piece of paper. It is the skill sets, the competencies and attributes that are cultivated during the pursuit and attainment of higher education, that the journey is intended to grow within the NCO. And that's something that I talk about in the article. And I just looked at it and go, I've got like a year and a half left on station in this profession before I transition over to the civilian side. And I just really want to get the ball rolling, going in this lull between wars. We have an opportunity to kind of set the foundation of our core non-commissioned officers and how we think, how we operate for the next war, where it might be decentralized. It may be those leaders are having to operate in a, degraded or denied environment where you're not going to be able to get the orders from up top, and you got to be able to assimilate, the information within your AO and operate quickly. And so we have to start building those individuals now. College education is certainly not an end-all, be-all. It's not the keys to the kingdom, but it's a component. It's an important component. And I think, honestly, we're missing the ball when it comes to messaging the spirit of intent behind the messaging of, hey, go to college. It's a good thing. Why? And I think we've missed that question of answering why.
I had one quick thing. I know Sergeant Nikita has a question here burning in his brain. But I wanted to ask you, Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, or YYZ?
I got to go Tom Sawyer. It's funny. My favorite Rush song, and like I said, I'm a huge Rush fan. And if you look at my doctoral, the dissertation, you're like, man, this guy, because that's actually one of the quotes that I have, was a master, but a master student. I have that in there. But the title of my dissertation is Prime Mover, Qualitative Method Study of a College Education Among U.S. Army Signal Corps Senior Non-Commissioned Officers. My favorite Rush song is Prime Mover off their 1987 Hold Your Fire album. And between the lyrics, one line that really hit hard, what the point of the journey is not to arrive. That is, there's like little nods, to Rush throughout the dissertation aspect of it. But no, given the three that you just gave me, Tom Sawyer.
Tom Sawyer. All right.
Tom Sawyer.
Well, my question was more going to be toward what you actually found, your findings, what the reasons are for, especially in senior NCOs, what they believe is the reason for getting a degree.
Yeah, so to kind of peeling it back, the origin of this has basically a foot in two different worlds. One of I actually met two people in the gym, Captain Andrew Christian and then First Sergeant Lana Heinrich. And so Captain Christian, he was E7, had crossed over and to the officer side of the house and had his doctorate in psychology. And then First Sergeant Heinrich, she's working on her PhD right now. And so just talking to him and going, what was your spark? Why did you decide to pursue, your own doctorate? And that's kind of got my brain thinking. And then as we're doing the initial study for the initial classes of the doctoral program, it very quickly came to my attention. There's not a lot of research material out there talking about NCOs and higher education, which really surprised me. And so I was actually able to stumble across an article by Command Sergeant Major Christopher Melendez that focused on higher education within the SOCOM community. It was published back in May 2019, and it was an absolute just godsend. And I loved what he did. I thought it was very insightfully written. And so I actually contacted him and started that dialogue and, asked him, hey, could I use elements of your doctoral to kind of set the foundation for mine and kind of give me a heading to go in? And a good way to think about it is a bachelor's teaches you what to think. A master's teaches you how to think. But if you're going for a doctorate, you're setting foot on uncharted territory. It's a whole new continent that somebody has never really explored before. And, his work was pivotal in kind of going, all right, cool. I knew I wanted to work something within education and the Army, but then seeing what he did, I was like, okay, cool. I want to focus on United States Army conventional Signal Corps senior non-commissioned officers. And kind of going back to what you were talking about, the current messaging is, it basically comes down to four different, areas. We got DAPAM 600-25, U.S. Army non-commissioned officer personal developmental guide, right. AR 621-5, Army and continuing education system. We got the centralized NCO evaluation board AARs, which constantly E7, E8, and E9 echo, hey, education, higher education. And then a soldier's military occupational specialty career map on the Army Career Tracker. Once again, you look at it and your grade plate and MOS and look down, it has the corresponding level of higher education that they recommend, based on those factors. And so you got these four different voices all talking about higher education. And so as I started, looking at it going, okay, cool. It should be pretty easy to find out the reason why. And I couldn't find the reason why at all. And then I was like, okay, well, the officer side of the house, commissioned officers, they require a bachelor's degree for commissioning. So surely it's codified somewhere the reason why. And so I started doing digging, and I could find the resources that said, okay, you have to have a bachelor to be a commissioned officer. But nowhere did it say the reason why. Once again, my brain kind of going, what's the purpose for the journey? And so then I started emailing people, VMI, West Point, senior officers that I knew, asking the question, going, hey, I know you don't know me, but I'm doing a doctoral on, higher education and, NCOs in the Army. And why do you think it's a requirement that the Army has for, commissioning is having a bachelor degree? And the answer all came back was, we don't know why. And so it went from me hoping to find codified doctrine to theory, going, well, we think it because it gives an equal playing field across, an equal basically starting point for all commissioned officers is to have at least a bachelor degree. And so being in a position to where, these four voices are all going, hey, higher education is a good thing, you should go for it. And me not being able to find any reason why, then I had to make the switch over from, hey, here's codified doctrine, either on the NCO or officer side of the house, to now it's theory and conjecture. And so we had to start reaching out to people, and we see that on the survey that I did.
Just to kind of fill the gaps there, and when the Army doesn't give a reason why, it allows for that void to be filled by speculation or by different thoughts on it. And
yes.
And so then it comes down to and senior NCOs, then you get to ask senior NCOs, which I loved about your articles, that you reached out to senior NCOs and you asked them why. And then you get a slew of responses, but a lot of them have to do with promotion. And so I think that's kind of where I was getting at, is that without this codified reason why, we're not really identifying the need for those degrees, and then it gets filled with different reasons, and that ends up hurting the force as well, right?
Absolutely, it is. My doctoral wound up focusing on 2 research questions. And the first one is, what are the motivating factors behind Signal Corps senior NCO decisions to pursue or not pursue a college education? And the research question number 2 was, how do senior leaders perceive the roles and organizational benefits of college education to Signal Corps senior NCOs? And so the data that I got back from interviews and from the anonymous online survey that I sent out wound up that 13 Signal Corps brigades and other eligible organizations participated in, with a total of 46 participants, NCO, warrant, and officer. And the answers we got back for research question number 1, the reasons, why they pursued it, hands down, was promotion. And the answers I got back was, well, I'm going so I could stay competitive for promotion. I'm doing because the Army tells me I got to do this to stay promoted, and to keep up with my peers. And then a much smaller degree was marketability. A lot of folks that are in the tail end of their careers, like, hey, there's a job on the outside I want to get post-retirement, and it requires a degree, so I'm going for that. And only a few folks said self-development. So that was very alarming for me, going, wow, we're spending a lot of effort and a lot of money in pursuit of something, and we don't know the reason why. And in the absence of orders and clear-cut guidance, everybody assumes, oh, well, I just need to do this to stay competitive. And so when you start looking at degree mills and the rise of AI that's being used, you could have somebody, theoretically, that could graduate with a bachelor's and hardly ever even written a paper. Have AI do it. Let me just go for an easy degree and an easy college and just breeze through it. And hey, I got my degree. I met the intent, right? To get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or an associate's. Hey, I got it. So that to me was very, very alarming. Going, we have completely missed the boat when it comes to, no, it's not the piece of paper. This is what we need to get, which fell into research question number 2. And so we started looking at, what are the benefits? Like, what do senior leaders, they start talking about the perceived beneficial skills developed while pursuing and obtaining higher education. And so all these, these people started, their feedback, and all these same, trends started coming across. It's just to name them: unlocks individuals' intellectual potential, further refines problem-solving skill sets, leads to higher reading and writing comprehension levels, develops holistic and asymmetrical thinking, fosters creativity, develops proper time management skills, cultivate intrinsic drive and self-reliance, enhances the ability to integrate available resource material in developing solutions to problems, improves self-confidence, and stimulates convergent, divergent, and lateral thinking. I don't know about you all, but those are qualities I want in a leader. And those are qualities that I want to cultivate within myself as a leader, not just a military leader, but also in the civilian sector as well. And so that's kind of the crux of me trying to, the prime mover, shall we say, behind me just trying to get the word out is look, we need to clarify the spirit of intent behind the messaging of go to college, get your education. And this is why we want you as the Army to cultivate these skill sets. That's the so what behind the message of go out and do it.
I hear what you're saying about having the degree. It gives you, that self-improvement gives you more intelligence, more, I guess, overarching understanding of things, which can help with critical thinking and problem solving and all that stuff. I would actually argue, and let's just say that I'm the non-believer, right? Let's say that I think that you don't need a college education to be a good leader. I don't think that you need that because you get a lot of that experience and learning in the Army. There's a lot of role models out there that you can look up to and kind of find your way, kind of find your path. And the whole message behind why we need college education never made sense to me. So it's like a barrier to entry, right? And on the other side of that barrier is lieutenant or sergeant first class, let's say, for a bachelor's degree. And it just never made sense because you could get a bachelor's degree in, basket weaving or dancing or whatever, and they would say, okay, well, you have your degree. That's great. Now let's take you to your school that'll give you that next rank or promotion, and then you'll be in charge of people. But that doesn't help me in my MOS or my field. So I just never really understood, because I think a lot of those things can be learned.
And you're true. Those are excellent points. And you're correct. You don't have to have a college education to be an excellent leader. And what I will respond to that is, when we look at education, as I said before, it's not the keys to the kingdom. It's not an end-all, be-all. It's a component. It goes back to that self-development domain. And if we truly want to realize our full potential, to fully realize what we are capable of as leaders, we have to be as diverse as possible within our skill sets. And achieving a college education in a relevant field to your profession, going back to that MOS career tracker map, on ACT, going, okay, if you're a signal leader, okay, a degree in history probably is not going to be very applicable to your degree. However, a bachelor's degree in information technology would. And that's where you start looking at that once again, that specificity of, going back to that roadmap for your career is already laid out for you. There's no guessing. It takes all the mystery and sorcery out of it. You just, this is my grade plate. This is my MOS. This is what the Army says that I should be going for educationally wise. And as we look at the self-development domain, it's the same thing as like PT or your field craft. It is a component of a soldier's development. And let's face it, war is changing. If a few years ago, if you had entered a room of senior leaders and said, hey, look, the little remote control toys that, teenagers are flying in the sky right now are going to play a major role in upcoming conflict, you would probably get laughed out of the room. But look at the role that drones are playing today. Warfare changes. It evolves. Does a college degree mean that you're going to, that if a leader does not have a college degree, does that mean that he or she is not a good leader? No, not at all. Don't just think about time in uniform. Think of life outside the uniform, whether you do 4 years or whether you do 30. College degree is going to help you out on the back end as well as a civilian life. So I really don't see a disadvantage other than the initial investment of time, of energy, into pursuing the right college degree. I think it can only help not only us as a force and as a soldier, as a leader, but also post-military retirement as well.
One of the things that I always think about when we publish articles, when we talk about the different things that the authors, the articles that they submit, I always look at it from the perspective and from the lens of the young NCOs, the young E5s, maybe even corporals, sergeants, developing good habits, developing a plan, having an idea where you want to go. I think it needs to start early. And I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe do you have any advice maybe for those young NCOs or some words of guidance or words of wisdom for them that you could share?
I'll frame that in the context of like two other individuals that, one senior NCO, one senior officer that kind of steer me in the right direction, and that would be Sergeant Major David Cryer, the Sergeant Major's Academy instructor at USASMA, and Lieutenant Colonel Brad McCoy, PhD, Assistant Dean for Research at the United States Army Military Academy, West Point. And both of them, when I was kind of like asking, in the initial stages of my research, they gave their perspectives from both the senior NCO and senior officer side of the house. And they were talking about development. It's a theme that they both said. And if we go back to the strategic corporal concept, there's a phrase I say a lot, with my soldiers, and they're probably sick of hearing it, but there's a purpose. According to the story, when did Noah build the ark? Before the flood. When's the time to start developing these skill sets in our NCOs? Before they become NCOs. Once again, going back to strategic corporal concept that I talk about in my dissertation, we need to be messaging, this is how we're going to grow you. You may be a PV1, PV2, PV3, whatever it is now, but as you continue down this road in your service, most of you are going to continue to climb upwards in the NCO ranks. And today's specialist is tomorrow's sergeant. And so as we start mentoring and especially senior leaders, handcrafting our replacements, being a mentor to those who one day are going to take our place in our nation's shield wall, and, just helping just pour all of our experience, our knowledge, everything we got, into the next generation that's going to, take over when we're out, when we're gone, when our tours are up, whether it's retirement or, we're done with our enlistment, we're getting out. As far as words of encouragement, for the younger generation, I'll be like, look, it's easy. Find 3 people. 1, find somebody who embodies characteristics and attributes that you want to cultivate inside yourself, and ask him or her to be your mentor. Find a second person. This person is someone who's outperforming you, a peer that's outperforming you. Like iron sharpens iron, especially in this profession. And that healthy competitive rivalry is going to push both of you to strive for mastery and for accomplishment. And then 3, find someone to mentor. That's not only are you going to learn the ins and outs of your job and how your mentor is mentoring you to take his or her place one day, you are going to be mentoring your protege to take your place one day. And if there's one lesson I've learned from almost 49 years of life, you got to stop waiting for the right time. You got to plant your flag in the here and now and say, I'm going to pull the trigger on this. Maybe difficult, maybe hard at times, but hey, instead of saying I don't have time, just come up on the net and be honest and be like, it's not important to me. Just be honest with me, and be honest more importantly with yourself about that. If it's truly important, you'll find time to do it. And at the end of it, you'll be a better person for it, and you'll be proud that you did. That's the advice I would give younger generations.
It's that's a lot of words of wisdom, and I appreciate that. I wish I'd have known you earlier on, and when I was in the service, when I was still active duty. That is.
I appreciate it, but I had incredible mentors, and who I am is a product of their mentorship, and the credit goes to them.
First, I was wondering if you have some sort of personal anecdote from a time in your life, your career, where someone made that impact at a pivotal point where it could have went the other way.
Yeah, actually I will. Looking back over the career, I had my first platoon sergeant first class Jerry Rogers, Charlie Company 3rd of the 509th, 1st Platoon Rogers Roughnecks. He was the one that set the gold standard for what a senior non-commissioned officer should be. He did not play around. He was very straightforward. He believed that you train hard, you push, you prepare for war. Because the time we were, that's what we were doing. We were, 2005, we were ramping up, getting ready to go to Iraq for the surge. He just really just drilled into us, look, in war, you either win or you die or get subjugated. There's no silver medal in war. There's no second place. And that mindset has stayed with me ever since. And that's why, all these years later, I still mention him as having a major influence on shaping, young PFC McLachlan's, mind of like what a senior non-commissioned officer should be, and he was brutal. And some of the trainings that he did, like he was rough, but he led from the front, and everything he asked us to do, he did himself. It was hard. It was difficult. But I look back and go, in Iraq during that surge, we knew, one, that we could take whatever was thrown at us because of the training that he did for us. And two, that no matter how bad it got, he was going to be right there beside us, leading the way. He truly embodied what a Ranger is. And that Ranger led the way.
First Sergeant, what do you think the Army can do better now to make our soldiers kind of understand that value of education and the effects it can have?
I think what we do now, like I said, how we develop our junior enlisted and our non-commissioned officers, kind of going back to that strategic corporal concept, will definitely set the tone for the next conflict that we have. And so I don't know if the conclusion of this endeavor will come to light before I retire out. It'd be great if it did, but if not, at the end of the day, it's not about me, and it never was. It's about the force. If I had one wish, for my career, it would be to have this issue addressed, to have those attributes and competencies kind of summed up in a publication and then sent out across the force, where senior leaders could take that and then brief it to their formations, going, yeah, we hear the messaging of college is important, from various different sources, but here's the so what, here's the reason why, here is the spirit of intent behind the messaging. If that ever happens, and hopefully it does, I can look back at my career and smile and go, yeah, the highs, the lows, everything, totally worth it. Perhaps that was my entire purpose for joining back in 2004, was to be able to make this little difference, this little tiny, entry into the book of our profession, for the betterment of all, not just here now, but future generations down the road.
Thank you, First Sergeant, for joining us, and thank you to our audience. Remember to put your knowledge to the page, submit articles, and get published with the NCO Journal. Don't forget to check out our webpage and follow us on social media. Catch you next time, NCO Journal Podcast.